Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to learn how to set up some pneumatic equipment here so that it works here with our VEX microcontroller. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is to grab your reservoir here, make sure the fittings are nice and snug, all right, and grab a piece of tubing. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is to insert the tubing into the inlet here, and when you push it, you'll feel it kind of pop into place or feel it kind of you got to push pretty firmly and you'll feel it kind of fall into place. And if you want to take the hose out, what you can do is push on this guy right here, push down, and you can take the hose back out. Okay. And so let's go ahead and put that guy back in. All right. So the next thing you're going to want to do is get an inline check valve here, and you want to look for the arrows, make sure they're going the right direction here. So you're going to push this hose into the valve here, grab another piece of tubing, push it into the valve. All right. Like I said, you'll feel these kind of fall into place or pop into place when you push them in. Okay. All right. So we've got our reservoir hooked up to our inline check valve here. Now we want to go ahead and get a solenoid. Okay. And for those of you who don't know, a solenoid is basically a magnetically induced switch. All right. So what's going to happen is electric current's going to go through here and it's going to create a magnetic field. And that magnetic field is going to move a small little tiny piece of metal up and down, which is going to basically act as our valve. All right, so when there's a magnetic field, when power is applied, it's going to pull it up and it's going to open our valve. And then when it turns off, the magnetic field's going to go away and the piece of metal is just going to fall back down, essentially closing our valve. All right, so that's basically what a solenoid is and how it works. Okay, you may have seen these on your sprinkler systems at your house and whatnot. So let's go ahead now, and what we want to do is we want to make sure this guy right here, this side, is hooked up to our reservoir. So go ahead and push that in. Okay, so we now have our solenoid hooked up to our reservoir. Okay, now we need to hook it up to our single acting piston here. So let's go ahead and grab another piece of tubing, push it in. Okay, and now let's come back to let's grab our single acting piston here. Now there's a couple different things about pneumatics. This is a single acting piston. Some of them have double acting. In other words, they have two inlets. They have an air valve here, like this one, and then they have one at the top too. So to push the piston back down. So this one will push the piston up and another air inlet to push the piston back down. All right, but in this case, we only have a single acting air inlet to push the piston up, and we have a spring in here to push the piston back down. Okay, so the spring will push it back down. Okay, so let's go ahead now and just go ahead, grab your tubing and push it in here. All right, nice and firmly, and that's it. Okay, one thing to note, if you don't like how fast your piston pops up when you turn it on, you can adjust the air inflow right here so it kind of comes up a little more slowly and less abrupt. Okay, so that's it. Make sure you have your reservoir, your inline valve here, to your solenoid, to your single acting piston here. All right, and then the last thing we need to do is to grab our solenoid, take this guy, plug it in, and find your digital outputs here, or excuse me, your digital inputs, and you're going to basically, whichever one you have it in your motors and sensors setup is what you're going to push it into. Okay, and that's it. You have everything hopefully set up correctly. If things don't work, double check, make sure everything's pushed in firmly and securely. Make sure these aren't opposite of one another. Okay, make sure this one isn't pushed into this one, and then that should do it.
So to fill up your reservoir, the first thing you want to do is only bring over your reservoir with the tube in your inline check valve, okay? Make sure that check valve is closed. And, okay, so when you go to fill it up, that's open and that's closed. Okay, now the reason I only have you bring this over is because I don't want you to bring over your VEX microcontroller so you don't end up dropping it or you break it something else or other. So only bring this over, okay? And when you're ready to fill it up, you can simply hook up a bicycle pump up to this guy right here and pump it up to about 80 psi. Okay, these things are rated at 250 psi, but 80 psi should be sufficient for what we're doing. Okay, and then the other way to pump it up or get air inside the reservoir is to hook it up to this chuck here. Okay, so use the chuck. Okay, use the air chuck and hook it up to here, and when you're ready to add air, simply push on this lever right here. Okay, and if you'll notice, okay, this is the PSI gauge. This should pop out and tell you roughly what your PSI is when you go to pump it up. Okay, so those are the two ways to fill up your reservoir. Once you have your reservoir completely filled up to about 80 PSI, okay, go ahead and take it back, hook it up to the rest of your pneumatic system, and test it out. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.